updates that John will share with you. And exciting updates. We'll get to that next. And at the end, we will have, of course, an opportunity for questions as well. So I wanted to start off by saying how grateful we are for all of the support and the efforts people have put in to make FABGC get us on the ballot and to the point where we are now with so much support. It's truly a grassroots organization. I'm sorry, someone, can you mute?
Someone's
Bruce?
talking.
All right, so I want to thank some of the volunteers, and I'll start with John Cantwell. Many of you have seen our website, which is fantastic, a great resource. It has the actual copy of the ballot up now. And thank you, John, for volunteering all of your time and putting that together. We also, our ads, thank you to Mickey Paxton for all the time you've put in on our ads that have been fantastic. For all the people who have been contributing with letters to the Garden City News and with their articles, we appreciate all of that. And of course, to Don McLeod, our social media intern, we are grateful. And our loyal secretary, he's been fielding numerous calls and questions and helping us organize this and making it what it is today. For the contributions too. We appreciate the contributions people have made through our website. And pretty much everyone who's been part of this effort has busy lives. We're in the midst of a pandemic, and we've really come together. We're bound together by a deep commitment to Garden City. We all feel strongly about it. And thank you for everyone for getting us here. At this point, we're gonna kind of give everyone a chance to talk about how their experience prepares them as a trustee and what they look forward to doing as a trustee if elected. And Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you. And I think you're going to ask some questions of our mayoral candidate, Cosmo, who is with us. He was not able to be with us last week because he was at hearings for the ARDB. So glad to have you back. And he was doing some good village work for us. So Tom, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, great. So for those that are new to our Zoom call, I'll just tell you a little bit about my background. I grew up in Garden City, as my wife. Somebody needs to go on mute.
Bruce.
I grew up in Garden City, as did my wife Donna. I've been a lifelong resident and raised 2 children here, going to the Garden City schools. And I love the town. I'm passionate about it, and that's why I'm running. So when I was asked to run and I knew the issues, I decided that it was a time for change. So as background on my community and civic activities, I've been I coached generations of young adults and children in football and baseball. I've been a member of St. Joseph's Parish since I was young. I'm one of 2 trustees there. I've been elected for over 30 years, and I've served on their finance committee for over 10 years. I also belong to many boards, not-for-profit boards. Some are global organizations, and I'm also on the business advisory board for the Zarb School of Business, focused around technology as one of their verticals that they're building within the university. So on those different boards, I've served on finance, budget, audit, and grants committees. And on the business side, I've been in a business executive, a global business executive, doing management and technology consulting and transformation for Fortune 500 companies. And that includes running a business unit of over 300 people, having P&L responsibility, profit and loss and budget for my organization, which actually became one of the top 10, we were named one of the top 10 consulting firms by Crane's Business New York due to those accomplishments of my business unit. So I've run all different sectors of operations within business, from sales to administration to recruiting to finance, the whole thing. So I can leverage all that experience and bring that experience as a trustee, to the Garden City Village. And I'm looking forward to serving. I think I can make a change. As I mentioned, I've done transformational work at the Fortune 500 level, but I also have done that for the Nassau and Suffolk governments. So both counties, I've worked with both of them. So I'd like to think that I can make a change, that I can be transformative. I'll be transparent, and I'm going to listen to the people and do what's right for the village. I have a passion for what's right for the village. Is the reason we all live here and have stayed here. It's amazing how many people who grew up here on the phone and as trustees are actually still working here and willing to put in the time to volunteer for the town. So with that, I'd like to give a little bit of a lead in to Cosmo's introduction. As you may know, Cosmo's been Citizen of the Year in Garden City, which is quite an accomplishment. He's very well respected. He's a licensed architect. He's been involved in residential, institutional, commercial, and also historic projects for over 35 years now. All right, and also Cosmo in the year 2000 served in the Garden City Board of Education's ad hoc committee, and he saved the village millions of taxpayer dollars with the restoration and also the alteration of the Garden City schools. And just last year was a member of the Western Property Owners Association for the Firehouse Committee. So he brings some very needed expertise right now that our village is screaming for around architecture, construction, and expenditures. He also has a ton of management experience that he's going to leverage in that role as mayor. So with Cosmo, is there anything that you'd like to add that I may have left out on your background?
No, that's a brief summary of what I've done, which is good. But I want to explain to people what architects do. Architects see things differently than other professionals do. We have sort of an understanding of how things go together almost three-dimensionally. And my expertise is really organization of getting all the different disciplines involved in getting, let's say, a project off the ground. What does that mean? That means we deal with structural engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, and we try to get the best minds together to come up with a program for a project. So, in summation, that's what I would do. For example, dealing with some of the projects that are looming on the horizon for Garden City. I know I've contributed quite a bit of time in Garden City on the ADRB committee since 2012. I think our group is a great group of residents who have experience in design and understand construction. And I think we've made progress in making sure that the village doesn't change too much, in terms of the architecture, in terms of the traditional designs that we do have. And also the history of the village. The history of the village is very, very important because this is a unique village that has so many historic structures that are listed on the National Register of Historic Places, which is a very special vetting process. So again, I bring a lot of different experience to the role of mayor, not only dealing with understanding construction and the logistics of building and design, but also dealing with different groups of people, right? Getting everybody together to work as a team, right? And that's what the architect does. We get all the consultants together to work together. We have a program, we have a goal, we try to achieve that goal. And what does that mean? That means we work on a schedule, we work on a specific budget. And that's something that we need to do in Garden City on all these projects that are looming.
Thank you, Cosmo.
Cosmo, if I could ask a question along those lines,
Sure.
Firehouse, in your experience, could you elaborate a little bit of the detail that you have gone into as far as the research and the like, as far as the potential change to the firehouse?
Well, again, as a member of the WPOA Firehouse Committee, we started in the fall of 2019, we started to analyze what was really needed for this firehouse called the Edgemere Firehouse, or Firehouse Station Number 2, as it's listed in Garden City. And what we just started to do is analyze the building. And what I did was essentially obtain the original drawings of the building and started to look at the structure of the building, how it was put together. And then we started to realize, okay, there are things you can do to this building to enlarge it, to accommodate any extra facilities that the fire department might need, and also to renovate the existing structure to accommodate any other facilities that they may need. And again, this goes back to what my concept of programming. Once you have a program of what you want to put into a structure, then you can start designing and start understanding how it is impacted by code, zoning, building construction, and also costs. So again, we look at all those things and we try to synthesize those elements into one project. On the Edgemere Firehouse, we realized, especially I realized when I walked through it, that it wasn't in such bad shape. It wasn't falling down as people have made comments about. And really, it can be saved. And again, I'm looking at always trying to save the village money, trying to make sure that we're not spending money needlessly, right? These are our taxpayer dollars. Let's use them wisely. And that's what architects do. They spend the client's money wisely. So if my client is Garden City, I'm going to make damn sure, right, that we're not overspending on these projects. Terry,
Bruce,
yeah?
you're muted.
Bruce is muted. Terry, why don't you?
I think I'm unmuted. Am I unmuted now?
You're unmuted.
Yeah, we hear you.
Terrific. Okay. Cosmo, you mentioned a number of times some of the historical structures that you've gotten involved with as an architect. Can you give us some of the examples?
Well, my firm is an award-winning firm. We just won an award to preserve and restore the original McGraw-Hill building, which was designed by Raymond Hood. Raymond Hood is a very famous American architect, considered one of the first skyscraper architects in the country. He did Rockefeller Center. He did the McGraw-Hill building. He did there's another building in Chicago that he did. I forgot the name of it, but he's a very famous architect. And what we did with that particular project, we did all the archival research and made sure that all the restoration details followed his original design. And the building was built in 1931, and now it's been restored almost exactly the way it was originally built. However, having said that, it looks like it was the original building, but now it has brand new infrastructure. It has all brand new mechanical systems. It has brand new wiring, state-of-the-art internet. So again, it's not just trying to restore a building and make it look like it was originally. It's putting in, the integration of all the new infrastructure to make it, state-of-the-art structure. And that's the beauty of design. That's the beauty of dealing with an old building. And by the way, I just don't do historic preservation work. I do modern contemporary designs. We do office interiors, we do apartments, we do townhouses, we do custom homes out in Long Island. So again, my practice is really varied. It doesn't just concentrate on historic preservation, even though that is about 50% of our work.
Cosmo, I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
Recently, an ad came out about that maybe the volunteer firemen would quit if the restoration and rebuild of the firehouse didn't take place. And I think it was misrepresented because we were on a Zoom call last night, and one of the trustee candidates mentioned that it was indeed not the sentiment of all the volunteer firemen. So it was a misleading ad. And he also said that it accomplished what it needed to because it changed your mind on where you stood on volunteer firemen versus paid firemen. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk to that and elaborate on it, on what your stand is on that.
Well, I'm in favor of volunteer firemen without question. I think my comments were taken out of context, right? That my comments were made regarding fire safety and making sure that we have fire safety throughout the village. So again, my comments were taken out of context. I think we corrected that. I think, I have no problems in making sure that the firemen get all the facilities they need in the village. Again, it has to be done appropriately, and I have no problems in making that kind of comment.
Yeah, and
It's amazing. I was just going to say, it's amazing how this community agreement party has this forte of cutting and splicing different comments that we've made and using them for a video. They're very good at that. I wonder what they're going to do tonight.
Well, I think it's somewhat disingenuous. I mean, we're all residents. We're all trying to do the right thing for Garden City, and to get to that level of comment and politics is very disappointing.
Yeah, and I know that in talking to the volunteer firemen, they were clear that the ones I spoke to were not represented properly within that ad, and they're upset over it, and they had no intention of quitting.
Well,
So I thought it was a fear-mongering type ad.
yes, I agree. I agree. I think it
That's
instilled
my
fear.
personal opinion on it.
I agree. I think if, it was misrepresented, and it also was a form of fear mongering.
Thank you. So Mary, why don't you go over your background a little bit?
All right, so I'm a lawyer, as I've mentioned previously. I have many years of experience. I was in litigation, and more recently, I've been an administrative law judge for the last 9 years. And I feel that the background of a lawyer definitely equips a person to be a trustee and handle a lot of the issues that come up with trustees. As far as, what brought me into this, and, a special interest I have really, or something that's been a concern of mine that led me to get involved, is the transparency issue and the open meetings law. And, we've written a lot about it, and I'm sure you're all, have read some, if not all of that. But that's something that I'd really be looking to ensure that the open meeting laws are complied with, that residents know what's going on with their government, that deliberations are out in the open. And I really feel like the best decisions come out of open deliberations. I think when you deliberate in secret, you're not getting all the input you can have. I did think, and I know people say transparency, like stop saying transparency like a broken record, but I thought it was interesting on last night's Zoom, one of the CAP candidates mentioned that she's been shocked with some decisions, surprised with, some decisions by the Board of Trustees. And then she's gone to her POA meeting afterwards, and the trustees have explained it to her, and then she better understood. And that was okay. And I think if you just think about that for a minute, that's not okay. That shouldn't be, if you go and you know the right person, you'll find out what's going on. Well, we all should know what's going on. So that's really, an issue that I am passionate about, and part of what's, brought me here. And looking forward to being able to bring more community engagement and transparency to the board.
Mary, how about from a legal aspect? What do you think you bring to this whole group?
I think the legal experience plays into all of that, being able to recognize, the spirit of the law, the open meetings law. Also, I think obviously negotiations and contracts, decision-making that's done by the Board of Trustees, that would, my skills as a lawyer and as a judge equip me to, draw on the input and help make good decisions for the village.
Mary, as a lifelong resident, I would think some of the things that have gone on in the village, and of course the firehouse being so close to you, from an emotional standpoint, must have brought you into this and into getting involved with FABGC, because it had to be frustrating to see some of the decisions this board has made that has adversely affected our village.
I think
Mhm.
it's, it is, when you start looking into it, I think I do feel strongly, but I think newer residents do as well. And I think what's going on now is as important to the person who moved here last year, if not more important, and it, but yeah, I think we all feel strongly, longtime residents and newer residents. And I think it's good government is something we all deserve.
And I think
Mary,
if I may, just to add to what Mary was saying, one of the things that we're all in favor of is treating each other the way we want to be treated. And I've had a number of situations where people contacted me and told me how they were ridiculed in some of the trustee meetings. One woman who brought up a concern about parking was told, behind the Hilton Hall, was told, that maybe she should move to Hicksville. Another woman was told on a situation that she brought up that maybe she should move to another town. I forget which town it was. But that's not a way to treat your neighbor. We should all be friends. We should all treat each other with respect, listen to each other. And even if you don't agree, acknowledge what they're saying and see if you can work a path forward.
Mary, I have another question for you. But before I do, I'm getting a couple of text messages that people want to ask questions. We will get to questions, but more towards the end of the kind of the Q&A here amongst ourselves. But Mary, I was going to ask you about the division of the one property and the two on Tanner's Pond Road down from you. What is your thoughts on that?
I think there's no doubt it's not good for the neighborhood to be dividing lots. And I think everyone's in agreement on that. We have spoken as a group, and Cosmo, has spoken. He's fought some of these divisions, and there are things we can do. It goes to the zoning, zoning laws to address that, because it's not the fault of the I think it's something that's an option, and it's lucrative to buy a house on a big lot like that and divide it and build two houses. But it just, it's bad for the surrounding area. And I think that's something that is pretty uniformly agreed within the town, and something we would like to address. That got a lot of attention. That subdivision.
I think we should give Bruce an opportunity to talk about his background a little bit and why he's running.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate that. I've mentioned this before, but I've been in the insurance business. It's now 46 years. And I started out at the Travelers Insurance Company, the red umbrella is their symbol, in New York City, and worked for them for a number of years. And then I decided to get involved into my own business as an independent agent, selling all forms of insurance, from auto to home to life to health. But my forte and what I concentrated on was commercial municipal business. And in that, I had to make my presentations to boards. Sometimes it was elected officials of the village, like in Mineola, or was it elected officers of an entity like the Carl Place Fire Department. And I would make my presentations, and I would review their insurance coverages. And I would do that in the context as to what their balance sheet showed and how their overall revenues were, because I didn't want to, overwhelm that. So I had to balance that with making sure they had the coverages they needed and review it. And there were many times when I would suggest some coverages that they didn't have. Many times professional liability type coverages. In the case of the fire department or a water district, failure to supply water. I mean, that's a coverage you would think water districts would have. But back when I looked at it, they didn't have it. And I've also had very good retention level for the clients I've had. I've had clients for almost 40 years that we've been able to service and help. And I think in my capacity on the village board, I could take the reverse position. I had to make my presentation to trustees, or as I said, village officials, to say why they should use me for their services and use my product. Well, I think I would be able to, when vendors come before the board with presentations for their programs or products, whatever that they want to present to the village. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that we've had, is we haven't put out bid processes for a lot of the different things that we've done, including the architectural study for our firehouse. I think I would be very able to cipher through that and make a decision that would be beneficial to the village. Having spent so much time in the insurance business and having done this, I was involved with my professional associations, the Tri-County Independent Agents. We represented over 500 insurance agents in Brooklyn, Queens, and and Nassau, as well as the Downstate Insurance Council, which was Westchester and all of Long Island. And I was recognized by both organizations, so one as the insurance person of the year and the other as an insurance executive of the year. I spent a lot of time. I spent time lobbying up and the major reason for that was my lobbying up in Albany and down in Washington for things that we felt would not only help our business, but help the consumer. And I think we were pretty successful in that. And that's why I guess I was acknowledged at that point.
Thanks,
Bruce, I have a
Bruce.
question for you, geared towards revamp. Talk about how the latest lawsuit and things like that, kind of the effort that you guys had in the grassroots effort in your neighborhood.
That's really, it's been quite a journey. You know, like all of us, you know, we hear this thing, well, where were these guys and so forth. You like to think your board of trustees is acting in the village's best interest and your best interest. And clearly what happened here, it didn't happen. From the get-go, from putting up a wall without any village input. The deputy mayor has told some of our neighbors, oh, we put it out. There was a presentation or online where you could see what the walls look like and the residents would have a choice. That never happened. No one in either Kensington or Brixton or any of the blocks saw any illustration of the different designs of the wall. But that's just the beginning of it. You know, once they tore out all the landscaping, I went with Paul Rothenbiller to meetings and trying to see what they were going to do. And then, of course, the big thing was the poles. We had met, Paul and I, with third track constructors. Travis Brennan, their public relations person, Leslie Meslick, who's a representative from the railroad. There was never any mention of the poles. And this was in September of 2019. But they knew about it. They knew at that point, although they claimed they did, that they were going to put them up. But so, of course, they went up in early April. And everybody got frustrated with that. We got together, we got a petition together with easily 600, if not more, signatures on it. Rich Carrero, our own John Cantwell, Charlie Kelly, Paul Rothenbiller, Jim Cummel, my neighbors were very, very heavily involved in that. Resident voters against the monster polls, and Aileen Lawler was another one. And we kept pursuing. We went to meetings, we went to POA meetings, the state's POA meetings, and we basically were blown off. You know, trustees Dorney and Foley just never really supported us from the beginning. It's like they had no interest. You know, they concerned about the parking lot at the Nassau Boulevard train station to get those bricks going. A lot of money came out of the community benefit fund from the railroad. And Stephen Macrinos, I guess, got what he needed for the Stewart Manor station. But what did we get? What did people that were adversely affected by the third track get? The noise at night, all hours of the night, the dirt, the large trucks damaging our streets. We've got nothing. We pursued them. We went to meetings. We had the meeting at Cluett Hall. And then finally in October, well after when it should have been done, they agreed to look into litigation, which they finally voted on in December. In April, if I had been on the board, and I'm sure any of my fellow revamp members, we would have filed an injunction against the MTA, the LIRR, to stop. Okay, stop what you're doing. First of all, they were supposed to be on the north side anyway. And they did not do an environmental study in terms of putting them on the south. So I have to say, and I again thank the people that I just mentioned for pursuing. If we had not done that, there would never be any litigation going on. And that's really how I got involved.
Yeah, on that point, and thanking people, I do thank all the people in Revamp, Bruce and the other organizers who really, you know, empowered people to start speaking up about what was going on that issue. And that really is part of what led into people coming together and realizing there were multiple different issues that needed addressing. And why don't we turn to finances, which is always on everyone's mind. Terry, do you want to talk a little bit about your background and your plans for the Board of Trustees?
Quickly bore everybody quickly, right? Lifelong resident of Garden City. My wife is a lifelong resident of Garden City as well. I've spent 35 years Wall Street, various capacities, fixed income, actually running a trading desk in charge of hiring, firing, budgeting, compensation, and account coverage, and ran a very successful business there. Then I switched over to the equity side for a bunch of years, and for the last 14 years, I've been out in Garden City working for an exchange-traded fund family. Some of the background that I had, I think, comes into play, and I listened to the board call last week where they were talking about the latest bond issuance, and the timing was actually very good. If anyone's been paying attention, 10-year notes started the year at about 92 basis points and then closed today about 148. So there's been a good move, and that saved the town some money there, and that's something that I would look forward to kind of being an overseer of that. It's really an interesting thing in that I got into For Better Garden City because of a couple of friends that asked me. I was not in the initial foray, if you will. And once I was pressed kind of on the issues, I decided I'm happy to kind of put my hat in the ring and try to help out in any way I can. We're all residents, we're all neighbors, some of us are friends, and we all have a common cause. So we want to see things be better. And that's truly the reason why I sit here today.
You know, Terry, you bring a ton of finance expertise to the village, which they could really capitalize on. And I know one of your reasons for running was your passion for the Andy Fund and the Jay Gallagher tournament coming back. I was wondering if you'd tell the folks here what happened and what you would do and what we should do going forward.
Well, one might be kind of done. The other one definitely could come back. The one that might be done is the Jay Gallagher. I was involved in that for probably about 12 years. Tony ran it for a bunch of years, raised over $1 million, gave a lot of money, gave all the money out to charities. It was a tremendous thing. People I played against come back and coach. They live in different states. It's something kids look forward to. It was kind of great end of the lacrosse season, both boys and girls. And it really was a fantastic thing. And again, it's just lacrosse is kind of a camaraderie here in the village. I'm happy to be a part of it. Alumni Garden City High School lacrosse. And to me, it was just something that I was very proud of that I was a part of it. Now, Tony has since retired it. I guess it's probably 3 years now, maybe 4. The reason why he retired it is the cost went from a free thing to $30,000. So that kind of cut into kind of his efforts as to how he could raise money for the Molly Foundation and different cancer foundations around the country. So whether or not we can resurrect that one, there's something I think we all need to kind of look at and think about. The Andy Foundation is something where my wife actually volunteers to shop twice a week. It's again a homegrown thing. It's done a tremendous amount of good around Long Island, building playgrounds for underprivileged kids. And it's again a grassroots effort run by Jill Palmieri. And it's a thing where every year they would have a sale inside St. Paul's. Once again, came down to fees. They ratcheted it up. They shut it down. That's something I think we could turn back around, and I would look forward to trying to help that out.
Yeah, thanks.
Terry, I mean, don't you think there's certainly better ways for the village to try to raise additional revenues than hitting fees for these really almost historic fundraising organizations? I mean, you think about the Andy Foundation, you remember hearing the day when he passed away. And it's kind of an emotional thing for a lot of people for a while. So I would certainly think we can come up with better ways than just charging additional fees for these organizations.
Well, I also know they were willing to negotiate it too. They didn't want to pay the full $30,000. They were happy to chip in a little bit more. So that is something that I think we should be pursuing. And again, it was something that obviously a sad story in town, was good on the back end of it of making good for other kids.
Thank you, Terry.
Tom, I'd like to switch over to you.
Oh, okay.
Jerry Kelly being a good friend, talk about how passionate you are about the whole handicap parking situation and the outcome.
Okay. Well, those who may not have heard this before, but that was one of my main drivers when I was asked to run. Jerry Kelly who was an All-American high school player in high school, broke all sorts of records at Williams College, and he could have went to a lot of schools, but he wanted to go there for the education. And he would have never predicted this, but he came down with multiple sclerosis, which has been very debilitating to him. And as a result of that, living in town and growing up in town, Jerry asked for handicap parking on 7th Street. And not only did the trustees unanimously vote it down, which was extremely discriminatory against those, not only Jerry, but those who are disabled and also the elderly. It was outrageous. And I'm embarrassed for our town that they represented us in that way, because I don't think anybody on this phone would have ever voted that down. And God forbid any of us end up in a wheelchair or a walker where we're going to need it. But if you spend a day in a wheelchair, on a walker, or crutches, you know how valuable it is to get parking where you don't have to walk, many blocks to get to a store. So anyway, in addition to voting unanimously against it, they also fought it for over 1.5 years, going through 2 attorneys. And finally, Jerry won after a long fight. His perseverance and his courage in getting there paved the way for other people, our fellow residents with disabilities. But when I saw that kind of action by the trustees and I was asked to run, there was no doubt in my mind that it was time for a change, and that I'd be happy to represent the residents and trying to do the right things going forward. And again, I think that that was despicable behavior, and my hat's off to Jerry for fighting for all of us to doing what's right and persevering, because it was a real struggle for him, very taxing on him. Can you imagine going to the meetings? And they made one comment to Jerry, if you know Jerry, that he shouldn't get the parking because he wasn't disabled. So he went to a meeting with his walker and said, "I understand a miracle happened. I'm no longer disabled." It was, that's the kind of treatment that Jerry Kelly, your fellow resident, my good friend since I was little, was handed by the current trustees. And that's despicable. And we need a change.
Sure. We had somebody on Facebook ask about your stand on St. Paul's, if you want to chat about that for a moment.
All right, and then we'll turn it over to the voting. Right. All right, so I think we have fielded this at some prior Zooms, but to reiterate, I think we have, there's no platform. Our platform is that it's a decision for the residents, and that's something that the present board has not committed to in spite of requests. We all feel strongly that with the scope of St. Paul's, it's not something that should be decided by 8 trustees. And one thing on St. Paul's is I've spoken with friends about our slate, and what I think is so remarkable about having someone with Cosmo's experience is that I think we will be in the best position ever to get to the point of a resolution and to be able to give the village a choice. And it will have to be a 2 option, as we learned from the last time, it's going to be demolition with a price tag, or whatever is the most feasible and likely to succeed option for development of or restoration of the building. So as far as a personal opinion, I don't know how I'd vote until I see, as a resident, as you all will vote, until I see what the options are. I don't know how I'm going to vote. I think I said in a prior one, if we vote to demolish, and I think maybe that's why, it's going to be hard and that will be emotional. But if that's the choice, our whole group here of 5 are committed to that, because we believe firmly that it should be the choice of the residents. And I'll pass it on to you, Terry. I guess we'll go around if you want to add.
Sure, I think I've said this before, but it's one of these things, if we could sit there and just making numbers up, I'm totally making up $20 million to build a new and resurrect it. I think it'd be a no-brainer. But I think when you really put numbers to it, again, total guess on my part is 20 million to knock it down and 100 million to rebuild it. I don't know. These are the numbers we have to come up with. And again, if you knock it down, what do you do with the empty space? There's a lot to it. Do you save the clock tower? there are a lot of things that people have said to me, and this is where we have to put numbers behind it and allow people to vote on it.
Cosmo?
Cosmo.
I
don't- my-
freezing up. Can you hear me? You hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with Mary and Terry. This has to be a referendum for the village regarding St. Paul's. St. Paul's is a very complex project for the village. It's been going on for too many years. We have to come up with a resolution. And as Mary says, there are really essentially two options. One is a development option, one is a demolition option. And it has to be vetted properly. And it requires quite a bit of analysis. And my goal is to get a resident group immediately formed to address St. Paul's.
I think with Cosmo's background, can you hear me? Cosmo's background, I think he's the perfect man to look into this. We're going to give the residents in a referendum two things to vote on. And it's going to take some time. But I feel confident with Cosmo heading us as mayor that we'll review it and we'll come up with as good a plan as we can.
Thank you, Bruce.
Tom?
John, you got another one?
Oh, did Tom say anything on St. Paul's?
I-
I'm
No,
sorry. Excuse
yeah.
me, Tom.
Yeah, I don't think I agree with everybody. I think it's a good approach and an up and down referendum. And for those that don't know, it's been going on for 30 years now. So we have to make a decision for the future of the building and the property and for future residents as well as ourselves.
I had brown hair and a baby when we first passed this bond issue. Now I have gray hair and 4 kids in college. It's been a long time.
I also am thinking that in the last, since 1993, I'm going to doubt, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, that we've had a trustee or a mayor who has the experience that Cosmo has with these types of projects. I think Cosmo has had projects of, on buildings, renovating buildings of a similar age. Is that right, Cosmo?
Yes, I'm sorry, Mary, you're breaking up a little bit on my end, but you're absolutely correct. I have the ability and the background and education that I can navigate through these projects and help the village tremendously.
I think that will be a big asset in getting to the point of putting it up for a referendum, and a referendum that's honest and real, that has, a real option with the accurate price tag on it, or 2 options with accurate price tags.
Absolutely.
So John, do you want to go over, there was some big news on the ballot today. For those who haven't heard yet, the ballots are at Village Hall. They look largely like we expected them, with one exception, and that being that they didn't line up the sections of town as we hoped they would. And as we requested, we did contact the village when we saw the draft and pleaded with them to please put the sections east over east, estates over estates, and central over central, to make it easier, to make sure that people were only, voting for in accordance with the community agreement. But that was declined, so we go forward. If you vote off FABGC, though, you're sure to keep the balance on the community agreement with the representation of the sections. So can everyone see there what John shared?
It's
This
full
John,
screen,
John, you might, for those that aren't used to Zoom, you might show them how to use the view option so they can make that bigger.
It looks pretty good.
To make it, it's not going to get a whole lot bigger in the screen here, but it's
Okay.
on our website, fabgc.org, under how to vote.
I think it looks pretty good. That's.
Oh yeah, John.
That-
Way to be, John.
That
Yeah.
looks, he's the best.
Got it.
He's the best. Just go across that second line, FABGC, all the way across those 5 names. All you need to do.
So to update people who have been concerned about the absentee ballots, it could have been as late as March 10th, which was our big concern. It is available now for people who have already put in their request for an absentee ballot. We're told they should be mailed out hopefully by tomorrow. If you have an agent picking them up in the next couple of days, the agent will be getting a phone call that the ballots are ready. And if someone walks in now to Village Hall and requests an absentee ballot, they can fill out the form and, depending on how busy he is, potentially just wait and walk out with your ballot that just needs to be delivered back by the election day.
And if I could point out one thing, you're allowed to vote outside of the section of town you live in. So for example, I live on the east, but I can vote for Mary on the west, which I will, Mary, I'm going to vote for you.
Thank you, Tom. I'm going to vote for you too.
Thanks. And then you can also, you can vote for, in the other section, in the middle part, you're allowed to vote for any three. So the people with the most votes are going to be the ones that are going to win. And then for mayor, of course, you're going to vote for Cosmo is my hope. So I just want you to know that you're not limited to the section you live in as was in the past. This is a village-wide election.
That's why I said, Tom, just go across that second line. Those 5 names, that's all they need to do.
Yeah, because as I'm meeting people and they're talking to me, they didn't know they could vote across sections in Garden City.
Oh, we have Carrie with her hand up there. John, can you unmute Carrie? One of our star volunteers.
Go ahead, Gary.
Hi, Carrie. Oh, your microphone might need to be put on.
Muted.
He has my laptop.
Okay. You can text me, Carrie, if you have a question.
I do
put
have
it in-
another one for you to fill the time here. I was just asked if the candidates support the community agreement.
Yes.
I'll start with that. I think one of the things that I'd like to be very clear about for everybody on the line and to spread the word, and I speak for everybody who's running for office in town here, not only do we support it, we want to go back to it. We're the traditional group. That's why we're running. As you can see, 3 of us grew up in this town and have stayed here or moved back. There's a reason we're running. We're very disappointed with the decisions that have had a negative effect on our village, and it's time for a change. And we need to go back to the traditional form of government that we've all enjoyed all this time, and in many cases, all our lives. So that's I want to make sure that that's clear with everybody, and please spread the word because that's a miscommunication on purpose.
Well said, Tom.
As I've said before, win or lose, I certainly expect to be going to estates POA meetings in the future.
And the other thing that I'd like to just, if I could add this, speaking of the POAs, we're looking forward to working with the POAs, and we'll all report back to the POAs on the board meetings if they were not able to attend. But we're also looking at other areas to get more exposure to the trustee meetings. I know that a lot of people have been so turned off that they don't even show up anymore because of the lack of respect of those that have brought up issues. That's going to change with us. We're going to listen to your issues. You're not going to be cut off. You're not going to be treated poorly. We'll treat you the way we want to be treated, and we're going to listen. And we'll try to get a path forward of collaboration and working together to make this town as good as it's always been, or return to where we were. So the other thing is, if you look at the Mineola town meetings, they're on cable TV. We'd like to look at doing that for ourselves. Maybe we can get it on cable TV. I don't know if any of you have ever seen that, in addition to Zoom meetings. So we're going to look at every avenue that we can to give better exposure to the trustee meetings for better participation. But believe me, you can return to them knowing that you can be treated with respect.
And I think one of the things we've been saying is we're going to have citizen committees. That's one of the things that frustrated me with the third track construction. Why were there no citizens on the committee? Citizens that were affected by it. So I think that's an important thing that we have to do, as we get on the board.
Mary, have you gotten Carrie's question?
Oh. No, Not yet.
Okay.
So, yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And we did, we have written, and our articles are on the website. So there's more on the website about our explanation as to how we are in favor of the community agreement, want to preserve the community agreement, but why we're challenging this year. And, you know, the issues just raised by Tom are just unacceptable. And that's the reason for the challenge. It's not acceptable that people are dismissed and poorly treated at the trustee meetings. Not acceptable to the community, the way the revamped residents were treated, the casino, the firehouse. There are just a lot of issues right now that need to be addressed. That doesn't mean that we're against the community agreement, because we're not. We're not looking to change this to a two-party system. That's, I know, something else that's being, you know, said. A lot of things, you know, you may be hearing just aren't true. That's one of them. We're not looking for a two-party system. We're challenging because of these specific issues that need to be addressed.
Yeah, and I think if I could add one more point, you know, we're disappointed in a lot of the residents on the open meeting laws that are not being adhered to, and that'll change.
There
And I
were,
guess along the lines of the community agreement, just one last thing to reassure you, we're looking to unite Garden City. We're not looking to divide. I think that was something in the ad from the other side, which couldn't be farther from the truth. And it's very much our desire to unite the village, to restore engagement, and to have a more harmonious local government.
there was a couple of comments while we were talking about ballots and such, mostly just kind of helpful comments. Remind everyone that the POA designations are not on the ballot at all. You're just going to vote all along that second row if you're voting for a Better Garden City. And then also just a request to reemphasize that you can vote beyond your section. I think there's a lot of worry that the way that these things have gone in the past, they've been very specific to section, and we're perhaps can do better about getting that message out.
You know, one other thing I'm thinking, John, perhaps we could put on our website, just so it's clear as people are filling out their ballots, where the different sections, the different candidates are from, which section. Not to suggest, you know, of course, we want everyone to vote all FABGC, but if you have a family member
I
who's
believe
a
that's
CAP,
on there, Mary.
some
There are
other
pictures. I
reason.
think it's on there.
Okay, so you could always check. Do we list who the CAP candidates are by section?
On our website?
Yeah, I'm just saying to
Yeah.
make it easier so that people don't inadvertently vote for 2 from the east or 2 from the central or the estates. If anyone's following the, I don't know if I'm being clear, if people understand why you may want to.
We can strategize how we update the website.
I wanted it on the ballot, but since it's not on the ballot, we can help you with that, with some clarification on our website.
Mary, we
check
just
the
tell them
random.
to vote across FABGC. Let's make it simple.
Yes, yes.
That's of course what we want.
Carrie, how are we doing?
I'm back. Thank you.
Good.
I was trying to do it on my phone and not a computer and just not tech savvy. What I did want to state is I have been bringing the request for the absentee ballots to village. And for anyone bringing them, I brought a bulk of them today because there were so many. Please be sure if you are the designated person to pick up the ballots and deliver them to the people, that where they designate your name, you also include your phone number, because the admin at Village Hall were inundated with requests. So I brought mine early afternoon. They said it would take a few days because they do have to fill out some information. So just make sure that your phone number is there and don't expect that you're going to leave with them. If you're asking for 1 or 2, she said that's fine. But, you know, I put in a good amount today and I have more to bring in tomorrow. So just remember there may be a lag time and you'll have to go back to make sure your phone number is on as the pickup person as well.
And actually, just if there's anyone on the call who hasn't, heard this already, if you are wanting to vote by absentee ballot, but you're not comfortable going out or you want help with that, you can email us, and we do have volunteers who can help you to make sure you can safely vote without any contact.
And Mary, where do they email us?
Info@FABGC through the website. Do the contact us through the website.
Thank you.
And this is actually something that you addressed earlier, so I think it can be relatively quick. I've heard rumors of reinstating a paid fire department. Can you talk about that?
We are not for reinstating any paid firefighter positions or any department. That's something we have
support the volunteer
discussed.
firemen.
Yeah, we support the volunteer force, and we have discussed, we know the difficulties with having the blended force that we used to have, and what the village, went through. It was difficult also making the change to an all volunteer force. And I guess I'll say for myself, I would not support going back to paid firefighters at this point in any.
I second that, Mary.
We love our volunteer firemen.
All right, just a couple more. What do you think of the current Board of Trustees spending $1 million on the Nassau Boulevard parking lot from the community fund instead of what it was originally for, which was to mitigate the third track project?
Maybe I'll start with that. Couldn't be more frustrated. I wrote a letter back in June in the Garden City News saying uncaring village board, going all the way through that, explaining how they got all that money for their bricks for the Nassau Boulevard parking lot. My next door neighbor, Paul Rothenbiller, knew Mark Roach, who was probably the number 2 man at the time at the MTA LIRR, and he said, well, there hasn't been any request for money for landscaping or anything related to the streets or anything that affected the part of the community that was most adversely affected by the third track. But there was money asked for, that amount of money, to take care of the Nassau Boulevard parking lot, as well as some renovations to the Stewart Manor parking lot. That was very frustrating. And that was part of one of the reasons why revamp was started once the polls went up, but just the frustration of the residents that, again, what are we getting for having to deal with the third track construction?
Yeah, I don't think it was even really widely known by residents what money was being used there. And I think anyone who realizes now how the money was being used sees the unfairness to that.
I did that letter. I almost wish I had tried to publicize it, or we tried to publicize it a little more, but whatever, it's come out now.
Any more questions, John?
Yeah,
We're at
yeah.
9:01.
Just a couple. Why do you think the CAP candidates think it's okay for 40 unelected nominating committee members to pick our Board of Trustees?
I think you have to look at it in one way. This is kind of where the village is morphed into as far as governance. Doesn't mean it's to stay that way, but if you sit there and have a property owner association of a few selecting one, as opposed to, do you want to be elected by 2,000 people, or do you want to be elected by 15 people? I think it's a way. Now, having said that, you still have to work with the POA, so it is a delicate balance, because this is the way the community is set up. So I understand it's complicated, but there were enough people that were upset, and this is why we sit here.
Yeah, and I think
Go ahead, Mary.
I think it will be my message to everyone to get involved in your POA after the election. And I think having robust POAs helps. I also, as far as the 40 people, I was a little confused as to what the question is. But I think it's clear that we've got some vetting. There's been a lot of mention to these candidates being vetted. And I think if you read what's been in the Garden City News, it's obviously they're not vetted sufficiently. And that's
I
something
think
maybe we need to work into some sort of safeguards to keep ourselves from being in this position in the future where you have candidates running in spite of, never, not really being accountable or answering to acts as trustees.
I think what we have to do is really get heavy involvement in the POAs, and that's part of the problem. A lot more people have to get involved in them. There has to be a lot more than, 15 people on nominating committees in each of the 4 POAs to decide who the candidates is. There has to be a lot more input from residents, and residents have to get involved if we're going to continue to do this.
But we've heard many stories about the POAs not able to get candidates, right? Not getting people involved. I think the WPOA and the other POAs should really try better outreach to get more community involvement in the POAs so they can draw from a larger pool of candidates rather than just people that are just focused in on the POA itself. They should reach out to the rest of the residents to see if they can get them more involved. That's the only way to increase the number of candidates you can vet. Otherwise, they're going to still have only one person that they can vet, or 2 people they can vet at one time.
And I think, I've worked with the POAs in the past. It's been a while that I was elected to the 10-member nominating committee on the East. And I believe in this case, many of the candidates that were put up by the different sections of town were not the most qualified people, nor did I want to see the same people elected doing the same things, making the same tough decisions and bad decisions on behalf of our town. So I think that was a motivator for all of us when we were asked to run. And as Terry said, now's the chance for the whole village to vote for who they want as a representative for the town going forward. So if you're looking for a change, we have a great slate here, all good people. As you can see, we're all passionate about doing the right thing. And so I think you should really think about where we are now, where we want to go, and if you think we can get you there.
That wrap it up on the questions, John?
No, sorry. The more y'all talk, the more people ask. Thoughts on making it a priority to assist our fellow residents on Arthur Street with ensuring the National Grid gas main project does not go through their street in front of their homes. Funds could also be pursued in a community fund to convert railroad right-of-way from 11th Street to Stewart into a walking path with good landscaping. So in general, thoughts on making it a priority to help the people on Arthur Street?
I think it's, like all these other issues, every resident will be our priority. And I think we'd immediately want to meet with the people on Arthur Street and, help in any way we can and explore all the different options.
I think we definitely need to hear from the residents. If there's one thing the poll issue has taught us, is that this board did not pay attention or even really look for much input from the residents. And I think that's something we will do going forward, including these, 2 issues, Arthur Street and the other that you spoke about.
Yeah, and I think just to answer to that, whoever answers the question, you're going to have a voice, you'll be heard, and we'll always try to do the right thing on behalf of the residents on the street. So you have a voice now, or hopefully you'll have a voice going forward.
Yes.
You will have a voice.
Yes,
Okay.
we're in there.
Yep.
All right, so we're just about done. One comment: if you vote a straight FABGC ticket, there's no danger of causing over or under representation of any section, but all the trustees and mayor serve the entire village and have the entire village's best interest at heart. I think that's just all for y'all to nod your heads along in agreement.
Yes, absolutely.
And then, how will you get village residents more involved in decisions? Namely the parking lot, St. Paul's, the firehouse. Is the town's government currently set up for this kind of involvement?
Well,
I think
let me answer this. because again, how I started originally in Garden City politics and serving the village is I became a member of a resident committee, right? And that was in the year 2000. I started working on on St. Paul's and the ad hoc school committee. So again, you have to get involved as a resident if you want to make a change. And to me, that's the simplest thing you can do is just try to get involved with your POA, get involved in the government. As mayor, what I would love to do is have these resident committees, reconvene and let's address these issues. And I've heard from residents in the village already saying they want to have certain committees on certain things and certain issues that they want to address immediately. And I said, that's no problem. We will definitely set up these resident committees, make sure that we have everybody involved, and then we'll get the best possible result for the village by doing this. And again, like I said, I was a member of these resident committees years ago, but I haven't seen them in the last 10 years. I haven't seen one resident committee.
Well, I think an indication of our transparency and letting you have a voice going forward is the fact that we decided to open these up to these town hall Zoom meetings so that you can hear we are, what we represent, and that you know that we're listening. So I think it's an indication of what's to come. So I think you're going to see a big change. I think because of the change, you'll see more participation. We welcome participation. We have so many brilliant people in town. And there's so many people who love to volunteer, including the young, who have great talents that isn't being tapped right now. So I'm hoping that we get voted in and we can really be, transformative and get back to the tradition that we're all used to in governing.
Voted in and have these resident committees to reach out to the people that have expertise in a lot of fields that it just has not been tapped.
I've had a bunch of conversations with people that have echoed the same thing. They would like to get involved and on these separate subcommittees.
I think it's important too, like there are some committees now, but I think, as we saw with the Western Firehouse, it's really important that the trustees, that the relationship is good between the trustees and the committees, and that people feel like their work is meaningful and being listened to. And I think that's critical to drawing people in and keeping them involved in committees.
Mary, I think the Board of Trustees, they should seek out these committees, right? It shouldn't be that, for example, revamp should be formed, the casino group should be formed, sustainable group should be formed. The Board of Trustees should seek these committees and say, let's form these committees. It shouldn't be just on the backs of the residents to set up these committees. The trustees should go out and seek these committees.
And listen to them too, and engage with them, so.
Absolutely.
Well said, Cosmo.
Okay, so we actually have a couple of questions that we haven't fielded before. So that's the good news, despite us being a little bit after 9. How do the FABGC candidates plan to embrace the ethnic diversity of new residents moving into the village and make these non-lifer residents feel welcomed in the community?
I think that's, whether you're a trustee or, a neighbor on the block, I think Garden City, is a tight community, and we want to be welcoming, and we want everyone to be part of that community. So I think being involved in village government or committees would be a great way. I think we are one community and inclusive.
I think there's no place for discrimination in our community at all.
I agree.
I welcome anybody to move in next door to me.
That's right. And so do I. I welcome anybody and love thy neighbor as thyself. And whether you have a disability or you come from a different color, if you're a different color, different religion, different ethnic group, you're always welcome, as Terry said, to live next door to me.
Ditto.
Okay, and specifically for Cosmo, if elected, are you planning to appoint Nick Regano to any village position? I'm concerned that his lawsuit against the Department of Health is partially funded by Dow Chemical.
I doubt that very much. First of all, I don't even know Nick Regano. I just saw one post that he made on Facebook, and that's all I know about him.
I think that was sort of a little misleading information from the other side on Cosmo Nick Regano, obviously.
well, I don't know who you,
John,
I know-
John, let me know when you're out of questions. I have one for you.
Okay, then I can probably just keep making stuff up. Actually, we're out. So fire away.
Well, before I get to that is I'm going to ask you when the election is. But we should mention once again and reiterate and highlight and really push this, that if anybody needs an agent to pick up ballots for them, we have people that will do it for them, pick them up, Village Hall, do everything, soup to nuts. Now, John, my question is, when is the voting and how do we vote?
All right. So the absentee ballots are actually available now. You can request them now from the village clerk. Go on to our website, fabgc.org. There's a button at the top for how to vote. That'll have all the information you need. If you get an absentee ballot, make sure that that ballot is back to the village clerk by the time the polls close on March 16th. Not just postmarked, but actually back in the village clerk's hands. If you intend to vote in person, then you have until from noon to 9 at Village Hall on March 16th. Only at Village Hall, only on March 16th, only from noon to 9.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thanks, everyone, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, John.
Have a good night.
Have a good night,
Good
everyone.
night. Bye-bye.
Bye, Tom. Bye, Terry.
Bye-bye,
Bruce.
everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.